Okay, so in today's video we're going to take a look at fitting a laser ammo laser spider attachment to a new pistol. So this pistol is the Umarex Colt M45. We've already done a kind of introduction review on this particular pistol, and I'll put a link to in the description to that video so you can take a look at that. But this particular pistol obviously has the Picatinny rail here, which obviously can accept attachments such as lights and lasers. So we're going to obviously fit the actual laser ammo spider attachment that we have here to this pistol. Now I've already obviously had this attached, as you can see here, to additional pistols. So here's a kind of Umarex Glock 17 with the laser attachment already fitted. So you can see how that obviously fits on this one. This one is a weaver rail, but obviously this attachment will fit both Picatinny and the weaver rail. And again, I've got one here on the Umarex Beretta. So this one, you can see again you've got the laser attachment attached here. Now this one obviously has a kind of different sort of like mounting situation to the Glock, but essentially if you've got a weaver rail or a Picatinny rail, you should be good to go. Okay, so let's take a look at the actual laser spider attachment in the box. So obviously this is what you get obviously from laser ammo. So this obviously box comes, and you have the option here to actually have this laser spider in either the infrared or the red laser. So this is the infrared version. So let's go ahead and open the box, and we'll just look at obviously the contents. So it's just like a little plastic clipped box, and inside you'll have your laser spider. To set that aside for a second. They also give you a number of couple of batteries, and you get some Allen keys, and also in here, I don't know if you can see that, but you get some small little grub screws which are used for the adjustment of the laser, obviously within the spider itself, when you want to zero that. So if you lose one of those or something happens with it, you can replace it. Okay, so let's go ahead and just put this obviously to one side a second. Now, in terms of the actual device itself, it's very straightforward. You've got the clamp here that you can actually use to clamp onto the pistol, and obviously you have the laser device here installed inside this like a chassis that fits onto the pistol itself. So let's go ahead and just remove that a second. So this literally just unscrews, and you can slide that out, and you can see in terms of sort of like position how obviously the length of the overall kind of laser detector, the laser actually device itself, is pretty consistent with obviously the chassis, and this is just like a screw thread in there, and obviously just sits inside that housing. Now the lasers themselves, whatever, they have these which is notable, so you can see the grub screws on here. So you have these four positioned at kind of, you know, your 12, 3 o'clock, 6 o'clock and 9 o'clock position, and these are used to adjust the actual laser's position within the actual housing. Now we'll come on to speak about that when I get it fitted to the gun, because when you come to obviously sight these in, you would make the adjustments on these to actually get your correct position for your point of impact to your point of aim. Okay, so let's have a quick look at the anatomy of this. So you have obviously, as you mentioned, the kind of screws at the front here which allow you to do adjustment. There's an O-ring seal here which gives you kind of almost like a bit of friction when you set this up inside the housing. So as you kind of screw this in place, what would happen is you would set one of these particular screws to this little white mark here. So that's where you obviously have a consistent position. So as you screw this in, the O-ring seal gives you some friction, so you can sort of dial in where you want this to be. Now what I typically do to ensure that you're using the correct position each time you obviously run this, because if you're supposed to remove the battery obviously between usages, to ensure you don't obviously have any drain on the battery. So what I typically do is just wind this all the way in as far as it can go. There's a bit of friction there, but you take it all the way in and it'll stop when it hits obviously the end of the threads. And you can see this doesn't quite line up here, so what I typically do then is just back it off just enough for the next particular grub screw to line up, and that would be my kind of elevation adjustments and my windage adjustments. So you can see how when I put this in each time, I just screw it right in, and then I just back it off by one grub screw position, and I know that that's always going to be consistent with how I set this laser up for this particular pistol in relation to the elevation and the windage adjustments. So it doesn't say that in instructions, it's something I've discovered over time. I just find it easier. I mean, you could daub a little bit of like white paint on one of these grub screws on the edge here, but then you'd have to know how many rotations you need to go in before you line it up. So that again, you know, can be confusing. So the easiest way is just to take it right in, find out where it obviously hits the position of the last stop on the thread, and then simply just back it up to the next one. And obviously each time you insert this, it will be consistent overall. Okay, so let's remove this again. Again, with that O-ring seal, it's just a little bit stiff, but you don't really want to oil this either, because then it becomes too loose. So you just have to wear it in over time, and it will be fine. So again, you've got the main body, and then at the back here you've got the vibration cap. So this is where you'd install the battery. So in here, if you can see clearly on the video on this camera, but there's some electronics in there that obviously detect the vibration. So this cap would detect the actual recoil on the gas blowback pistol, and obviously this detects any vibration. It also does detect like the hammer fall. So for double actions like the Berettas, literally pulling the trigger and the hammer falling does actually trigger this. And they don't recommend that in instructions in terms of obviously it being consistent firing, but it does seem to detect it. So I've used that in the past, and I've had the occasional miss shot, but typically it's built to pick up the recoil action. So inside here you have a spring, which obviously is where your battery would sit. So you'd go ahead and obviously install the battery in there. So let's go ahead and do that now. So I'll just open this additional package. Now it says here obviously about making sure that you follow the guide, whatever, when you're doing this. So again, always use the instructions. So if I open this up, they give you a couple of Allen keys. So you have your kind of windage and elevation Allen key. You have your Allen key for doing the fitting of the spider itself to the pistol, and obviously you have a couple of batteries. So I'll take one out and then just close it up a sec. So the batteries themselves are basically like small little, if you think of the kind of watch type batteries, and they're in this like heat shrink package. So I don't know if you can see there's 3 of these, and obviously that comes in at, these batteries are usually about 1.5 volts, so you've got your sort of 4.5 volts here. And you can buy these packs from Laser Ammo. Obviously, you can literally just go and buy a number of those. They give you 2 on the pack, and I've got a few of these obviously with the laser spiders that I've bought before, and I haven't had one of these run out yet. I tend to not sort of like keep them separate from each other, so I just pick one random one. So I tend to randomly pick one from the group I've got. But you can actually buy like obviously just a single batteries themselves, whatever, and you could install those. Now obviously they recommend using their own batteries, whatever, because obviously they come in this like heat shrink pack for convenience. But I have used in the past like single watch batteries that I've bought. So you can buy them on Amazon or anywhere. They're not obviously packed in this sort of package itself, so they're a bit sort of fiddly because you have to hold all 3 of them in situ while you install them. So that can be a bit of a pain, but it can be done. So if you find obviously you've run out of batteries, or you've got some on order, or you do have the option to be able to use single batteries, as long as you make sure that they're 1.5 volts each. But again, in terms of sort of covering the warranty of the actual product, you might want to stick with the kind of batteries that are supplied by Laser Ammo, but you do have that option if you find you want to go down that route. Okay, so to install this, you have to make sure that you install with the plus side or the writing on the batteries facing up, and that would insert into the actual physical laser itself in that manner. Now it has this spring here, so it has a tendency to want to come back at you, so you have to just rest it on there, and then the cap itself would obviously then fit over the battery and screw down, as you see here. Now once that's done, obviously that's now active, so just go ahead and quickly test that. So I'm going to bring in so this is a kind of electronic target device from Laser Ammo. This is the LaserPET 2, and again I've got another video on this if you want to check that out, and I'll put a link in the description. But this just detects on this face plate here any sort of laser hits. So let's go ahead and just set it up, and I'll just rest that down here. I should be able to do it from this side of view. So if I tap the back of this particular laser itself over a vibration cap, we should be able to get a hit. There you go. So just me literally tapping the back of that triggers a hit. And this is an infrared laser, but you can see how subtle that vibration was. That's why I was saying that the hammer falling on a double action type pistol would, without CO2 being needed for the gas blowback, would give you that ability to hit. Okay, so let's go ahead now then and actually install this onto the pistol itself. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to fit this into the housing. Let's screw that in. I'm not going to go right in. I'm just going to screw it in just enough to kind of hold it in position. And we've got this clamp now. So you have this kind of single sort of Allen key, hex key here that can adjust this to lock onto your Picatinny rail or your Weaver rail, and you need to be pretty careful to make sure you don't over tighten this. Same with the kind of windage and elevation screws. They need to be just snug when they're adjusting on the laser itself, but not over tightened, because you will damage it. So just be conscious of that. Okay, so when you first get this, you might want to just take the Allen key and just back this off a little bit, so you've got a bit of space for this to be able to fit over your Weaver rail or Picatinny rail. And then we're going to fit it on this this Colt M45, which has a Picatinny rail here. Now this one, I don't know if you'll see that, it has the kind of standard sort of grooves you would get. Now with the laser ammo Spider, there's no center nub to lock into these grooves, so you don't have to worry too much about that. It's just literally clamping onto the rail itself. So what I typically do is obviously install this over the rail and just hold it in position, just with finger and thumb on the rail itself. And position wise, it's perfectly, you can choose to have it wherever you want on the rail. There's no real kind of concerns about that. The only thing to bear in mind would be that obviously if you have it at a position here where this is obstructed by some part of the pistol, you won't be able to set the elevation or windage adjustments without having to unscrew this. So that's why I tend to want to bring it forward a bit. That lets you do that. But what you can do is, if you want for kind of aesthetics, or you want to have it flush with the pistol itself like this, you can do that, and I'm going to do that on this one, and we'll show you how I normally adjust the windage and elevation with this kind of situation here. So once you've got that, you want to just insert your Allen key or hex key and just finger tight, just to sort of get it to kind of just pinch onto the rail. It's not on there permanently yet, but it's on there enough to just hold it. So you can see that that's now basically how this will look, and it's kind of flush with that mounting system there. So once you've got that done, you then want to just obviously then pinch it up. So again, it's not too tight. You just want to have it so it's just snug and kind of holding the device in place. So you just kind of pinch it tight. Now you can adjust this over time. If you find it's obviously slipping or you're losing your zero, then you might want to come back and revisit this. But you certainly don't want to over tighten it, because you can actually break the clamp here. This will crack, and I've had that happen on me. So you need to be kind of conscious of that, because these things won't tolerate too much tightness. Okay, so that's pretty much it. So if we obviously look at this pistol, I'll just make sure obviously it's all unloaded. There's no CO2 here, and there's no BBs in here. But if we just rack this a few times, feels okay on there. Feels pretty sturdy. It's not going to go anywhere. Now we'll go ahead and obviously just check this. So again, I want to bring in the device and put that down a second, and you can see here, if I have this gun, it's now cocked. Just a hammer fall will cause it to fire off. So that's definitely usable for when you want to do some single shot training. You'll notice here that even me cocking the device will cause the laser to trigger. So when you're racking a slide or cocking the device and you're on the simulators or targets, you might want to do that away from the targets and then come back on target to take your shot. Okay, so that all looks pretty good. So let's just quickly talk about obviously adjusting the windage and elevation. So as I mentioned before, what I typically do on this is I would tighten it right up to the point where it's at the end of its thread. So that's here. And if you recall, I said I'd back away to this position. So now I know that this here, this grub screw on this side and on the following side would be my windage adjustments, and the one above and the one below would be my elevation. And now clearly I can't get to the elevation at the top here. So obviously what would happen on this particular one, if I found that I was sighting this in, I would have to unscrew this a bit to then get access to that, to make that adjustment, and then just reposition it. So that's typically how I would do things. So just to sort of recap, if I found that I needed to adjust obviously this because the laser was needed an elevation adjustment, and I needed to adjust the top one, I would just turn it back towards me. I know that this now is the elevation. I would make that adjustment and then obviously move it back into position. So that's typically how I do it if you have the kind of screw head here obstructed by anything on the pistol. Now, just quickly, the last thing to sort of point out on this one is that obviously from an adjustment perspective, let me just literally remove this to make it easier to sort of explain. This, when you're adjusting this for like your laser point of impact, point of aim, you obviously have the ability to be able to adjust the laser. So this is the actual point of impact that you're adjusting and not your point of aim. So typically with most guns, I mean obviously with the Glock and this one, you know, your sights are fixed. So they're fixed position. And on a sort of, you know, standard real gun, you'd have the barrel obviously with the bullet coming out, and obviously you'd be able to adjust your sights if you had that adjustment option to obviously zero the pistol. Now with this particular type of setup, whatever, you're looking at obviously adjusting your point of impact to your point of aim. So what we'll do is just quickly briefly talk about that. So on this one, depending on which of these scrub screws you want to use for elevation, you would have to find, if you were shooting too high, so let's say your point of aim and you shoot and your laser splash was up high, you want to bring the laser point of impact down. So you'd have to basically, if this was your top elevation on this scrub screw here, you would have to have a situation where you want to push or screw that in more to push a laser to tilt down. So what you would do then is you would loosen off the one below to allow you some sort of slack in there, play, and then this one you would tighten down. So that would allow the laser here to sort of like to sort of simulate this to be angled down. So you would literally pointing it down. So that's the kind of thing you'd have to remember when you're sighting this in. You have to slack off one side in order to sort of like tighten up the other one to adjust the laser's position, because the laser can be adjusted obviously, you know, depending on where you want the laser hit to be. That's how you would typically go about doing this. You would adjust those to move the point of impact to the point of aim, rather than obviously on a traditional sort of rifle or something of that nature where you have the optic and your point of impact. You're moving your crosshairs, your reticule to that point of impact, so you obviously have it zeroed. So this is pretty much the direct opposite of that when you have this ability to make the adjustment. Now, in terms of obviously if you have a pistol that you can adjust the sights, you could get away with obviously having this as close as you can get it in terms of its kind of central position, and then you could adjust your sights to match this. You have that option as well. I don't own a pistol that has they're all fixed sights, so the only option I've got on these ones is to adjust the actual laser itself. But it's pretty straightforward, and laser ammo do have good instructions. The instructions, however, are not in the box, so let me show you quickly here. So you get this cardboard insert, but they give you instructions obviously regarding fitting, but they don't talk about the whole process of doing the zero. Now you can access that with their website, so I'll put a link in the description here so you can go and look at that. It's a PDF that you can download, and it gives you some detailed instructions of how to kind of do the zero. But this covers essentially just a kind of quick user start to set up the pistol by installing obviously the battery and understanding exactly how obviously that all sets up. But yeah, from a point of view of the zero process, you can access their online documentation. Okay, so that's pretty much it for the kind of sort of setup of the spider, you know, within the actual pistol itself. What we'll do now is we'll go ahead and obviously run this on the simulator and see how this Colt 45, this Umarex Colt 45 does. So hopefully we can now get this zeroed and show you obviously how this runs on a simulator. Okay, we'll take a look at that now. Okay, so we're going to use the Virtuascore target shooting simulator, and this one we're going to use the actual Umarex Colt M45 in single action mode, and we're going to run it basically at 0 yards kind of in terms of the distance on screen. I'm going to be about 3 yards back from the screen, and we're going to have 10 shots. Okay, so wait for the after action report, but I think it's pretty clear there. I mean, that felt pretty good on the trigger. Again, at this distance, you wouldn't expect to be anything other than sort of 10 hits. But yeah, I mean, the trigger felt good, and the pistol grip, again, felt good in the hands. So we're going to run that again, this time another 10 shots, but we're going to do 3 yards simulated, and again I'm 3 yards back. Again, this will be running in single action mode. Okay, so same again, able to stay on target, obviously with 10 hits in the centre bullseye. Okay, so that was single action. Again, felt pretty good. So we're now going to try a different target in here. We're going to use a CO2 canister with the recoil effect and fire off a few shots to see what sort of like rapid shooting feels like with the Colt M45. Okay, so that was the Umarex Colt M45. So basically, running that on the simulator, did a few shots using obviously just a single action mode, and also the CO2 kind of double action with the slide reciprocation. That actually worked quite well. I mean, the recoil is quite positive on there, and obviously being able to get on target was pretty good. I mean, with the sights being quite open and clean, you were able to get on the target quickly. The trigger, again, I had some reservations about the trigger, but the actual trigger itself, I mean, performed really well. I mean, allowed me to get on shot quickly and also fire off quite a lot of shots really fast, stably. So yeah, sort of pretty impressed. And obviously the laser attachment fitment here that we set up run quite smoothly, and I managed to get that zeroed as good as I could get, so that helped. And yeah, so overall, I mean, pretty impressed. So point of view of obviously keeping this as a active working gun on my simulators, this would be definitely one that gets a lot of use. Okay, so stay tuned for other videos when we run this again on different types of simulators, but for now, cheers for watching.